I've served as a faculty advisor. So remember, our chapters are not only led by our students, but every chapter must have a faculty advisor, more than one faculty advisor. Please stand up. And if you are one of the current leaders of the LMSA National, please stand up. One of the current leaders. So I'm going to ask Juan to come up here and just help me get the slide up. As you can see, it's always a partnership between students and faculty advisors. but I share that because I think although LMSA has been known and prides itself on being a student-led organization that's been extremely successful, right? 50 years of student leaders, we don't do it in isolation. And we do it on the shoulders of our alumni, and we do it in partnership with our faculty advisors. And I just want to remind everyone of the importance of that. You cannot drive change at our hierarchical medical schools without the partnership of advisors and students. It will be impossible. And as we know from our day-to-day lives, some things have not changed over the past 50 years. One of the most famous quotes by Dr. Rivera and Dr. Carrillo is the following. As the Boricua Health Organization, this group was formed in 1972 at Harvard Medical School in response to the need for Latino medical students to organize against health discrimination both outside of our academic health centers, but also inside. We currently represent nearly 20% of the US population. 20%. 1 in 5 individuals, inhabitants of our country, are Latino, Latina, Latinx, Latine, Hispanic or Spanish origin, Afro-Latino, Puerto Rican, or as a Bronx Puerto Rican and Nuyorican myself. So over this past 50 years, a little bit more history, and then I'm going to pass it over to the experts, Dr. Rivera and Dr. Carrillo. We started as an organization in the Northeast as one of our regional groups of the Boricua Health Organization. In 1982, the Chicano Latino Medical Student Association was founded on the West, which later became LMSA, which we've come to adopt as our national identity. In 1987, the two regions came together to form NLAMS, the National Network for Latino Medical Students. 1990, the Latino Midwest Medical Student Association, or LMSA, was formed. Once again, in 2003, these three regions came together and mobilized to develop regional entities in the Southeast in 2005, and finally, the fifth region, the Southwest, in 2007, eventually bringing us today as LMSA, once again, has thousands of members just every year. We're probably over 20 to 25,000 alumni as a part of LMSA. So with that, please help me in giving a huge round of applause to Dr. Emilio Carrillo and Dr. Jaime Rivera, who are going to be joining us, coming up to stage now, providing their vision and the launch and sharing their wisdom for the next 50 years.
Buenos días, good morning.
Good morning.
Jaime, connected? To us? Bueno. It's a pleasure to be here. This is like a phenomenal moment for me, and I'm just so proud to be here. And I think Jaime and I didn't expect to be here 50 years later. But here we are, and here you are. My God, thousands thousands, 140 chapters. I mean, that's a big jump from one little chapter in Harvard Medical School in the basement of a building, in a little corner with a heating that was too hot and no furniture, and a landline, or one landline. And that's how we started. Why did it start at that moment? I mean, what was that moment in time? The late 1960s, early 1970s were a time of change. It was a time of, like Thomas Kuhn, structural scientific revolutions, a moment of a tipping point, a qualitative change in our society. We had the Vietnam War, which was just exploding, thousands were dying. We had, finally, after Reconstruction basically failed and discrimination just blossomed all over this country, we finally had a movement that came together. Martin Luther King, so many others, and they were killed. Bobby Kennedy was killed. There were riots all over the country, all the big cities. And Latinos also woke up and said, enough. We basically went to the streets. That's me there, looking a little bit darker, no so much white hair. And we basically, this moment not only touched civil rights, it touched every aspect. Women's rights, LGBTQ plus rights, the rights of immigrants, the rights of everyone. It was a moment where we focused again on the rights of people. And then Jaime and I, Luis, Carrillo Acosta, Helen Rodriguez, we said, this is our moment. This is our time to do what needs to be done. And at that time, I was at Columbia College. As I was telling my dear wife Yvette and my son Alejandro, I would prepare 2 weeks before the final exam, and the rest of the time was on the street organizing. We did housing organizing. There was a lot of folks in northern Manhattan who were homeless, and myself and others put together squatter movements. And at the time, I don't know how many of you heard about the Young Lords. Okay?
The Lords.
The Young Lords are sort of being rediscovered now. There's a movie coming out, and documentaries, and Netflix, and whatnot. I mean, basically, the Young Lords were young kids who, mostly from Chicago, East Harlem, New York, who basically came together and started advocating for health, for education, for food, for our communities. And there we were. I mean, the Young Lords worked with us in the squatter movement, so I was associated with the Young Lords. And Juan Gonzalez, who was the minister of the Young Lords, you may have seen him here and there, said to me, Emilio, I know that you're going to med school, you're probably going to be staying here in Columbia, but I heard you got into Harvard, and our brother, Luis Carrillo Acosta, is in Boston trying to start a chapter of the Young Lords. And it happens that Luis, who had been a seminarian, who was never really a formal pre-med, was in a special program at MIT and Harvard that basically was looking to bring into medicine people of color, which there was practically none. At the time, what people of color were in medical schools? Well, every year in every class, maybe there was one African American. Latinos, we maybe had one every other year, and they were the sons and daughters of well-to-do parents, like my kids now, who came, but there was no mainland. There was no mainland Puerto Rican. There was no mainland Latinos. And why Puerto Rican? Why are we talking, why Puerto Rico Health Organization? Because the Latino world in the East Coast Puerto Rican, New York. That was our world. And we became, basically, we sat around Jaime's house and we thought about a name and we said, well, Boricua Health Organization. Because myself, I'm Cuban. Gloria Paoli came the next year, is Dominican. There was people from Latin America. But we were Boricua because that was the nomenclature, that was the identification of the LHS Plus community at the time. So basically, what happened was that Luis, Jaime and I, we basically found each other. Jaime helped me get a job to be able to get into the school and be able to pay. And we found a place to live together, and we basically every night till 2 in the morning talked about what we have to do and how we're going to do it. Luis Garden basically was hanging by a thread. He was a seminarian. He was going to be a priest. He did not have any real science background, and he was failing. And we felt that Luis had to basically make it, and we gave him every support that we could. And it turned out that the medical school, he already had run out the clock, and Harvard Medical School was going to have basically a decision whether Luis would become a regular student at Harvard Med or whether he'd be gone. At the time, Albert Toussaint, Leon Eisenberg, and other great leaders in the faculty had been advocating for us, and Edna Cabrera, whom I'll show you her picture in a minute, was actually the first Puerto Rican, Latina, who came, mainland, who came to Harvard Medical School. So we basically, at the time, with nothing to lean on, nothing to work on, decided that our job is to get Luis into the medical school. And we organized, like we did in the housing in the Young Lords, something that Harvard had never seen in all its hundreds of years. We connected with the communities from the very beginning. We connected with the leadership of the community organizations. We went to the media. We connected with the TV stations, with the newspapers, and we did an organizing job, which they had never seen at Harvard Medical School. We basically were there the day the admissions committee was meeting in Building A, and those of you who are from Harvard know Building A. We had a community demonstration with hundreds of people from the community advocating for Luis Garden, because we want to have a New Yorican in Harvard Medical School. We have to be here. This is ours too. The TV was there. They were very nervous. I mean, they weren't expecting that. That's something unheard of. Very nervous. They had their meeting. And they took Luis with a proviso, which was a killer. Luis, who had like no background in science, had to make it like any other student. So they took away his special student status. At that point, you know, we were just elated, and we thought we had won this great battle. The news went all over the Latino news wire at the time, which was not, you know, digital, it was just phone landlines. And we were very happy, and we were very pleased. And we said, well, what are we going to do? We're going to create an organization that's going to go on and on and on. What we've done here gives us the thrust, the momentum, to create something that will stay and it will stand. And that's what we did. That was the momentum, and that was the birth of the organization. Again, Helen Rodriguez comes later that year, but that was the very beginning in Jaime's house on the second floor on 81 Calumet Street. So this is a very important document. Because one of the things that we got was we were able to get a recruiter, okay? We said we need a recruiter. So Josefina Vasquez, who was then the wife of Luis, very talented, became our very first ever LMSA recruiter. And she and Dr. Toussaint got us a little basement office, as I mentioned, with a landline, and we said, okay, let's get the word out. So we put together this poster, this little yellow poster, and I have a copy of it. couldn't bring it, but I have one. And there on the left side on top, you see that's Edna. And we came up with 3 basic principles for the organization, which I believe are the DNA of LMSA. Just like DNA has kept us going for thousands and millennia, DNA of BHO has brought us here. And those are 3 things. Number 1, to motivate and recruit Latinos into medical school. And we're all about that. We're all about recruiting, always recruiting. Number 2, to retain these students. Because, boy, was it hard. I mean, we were coming from all the worlds. I mean, I was privileged. I had an Ivy League background at Columbia College, but we were coming from seminaries, from community colleges, so we were dropping like flies. So it was so important for us to have retention. Right now, it's still a problem, but then it was a huge problem. And thirdly, it was just, as we used to say, not to become Harvardized. We did not want to be Harvardized. We were at Harvard, but we wanted to be community. We wanted to bring the community into Harvard. We did not want to abandon the community. So those 3 points, you can see throughout the history, the 5 decades of LMSA. The recruitment, the retention, the involvement with the community, those 3 points have guided us. And at the very left bottom corner, Jaime came up with that little diagram, beautiful icon, which still has evolved, and I know that we couldn't get our pins this year because of the whole issue with China and transportation. This was our initial icon, our initial emblem, which has evolved, but it's pretty much still very much like it was at the time. I think when you take the elevator, I don't know if you ever look back or to the side and you see this sculpture, and very Philadelphia, join or die. That's us. We're here. We join or we die. We don't get to medical school, we drop out, we don't make it to residency. So, you know, in unity there is strength. And just like the old founders, we realized that if we didn't do this, we were not just being, like, you know, magnanimous, and we were in survival mode. So we knew we had to come together. And this basically is one of our key determinants. Other key determinants are leadership. We knew from the very beginning that we saw from what was going on in front of us that once a medical student got into what was then third year, now that they have like maybe even 1 year of pre-clinical, but then it was 2 years of preclinical, and then the minute people got into the wards, disappeared. I mean, maybe you'll see them at the dance, you know, once a month or something, but you wouldn't see them again, right? That's the life, right, students? So basically, we knew that to continue the organization, we had to involve the freshmen. That the freshmen had to be brought in immediately, and had our leaders were our freshmen. Do we still do that? DNA. The second principle is autonomy. Okay, we were a little extreme with this, but we felt that we don't want to depend on grants. We don't want to depend on the goodwill of medical schools. We want to survive, and we want to survive with minimal resources, but we want to survive. We don't want to be strangled by grants. We don't want to be strangled by others who have our money. So we really were very big on autonomy, and basically just doing it, having fundraisers and getting, you know, getting our recruiters, etc., from the schools, but really not depending on others. And the third thing was mutual support. Just like here, you have all these different chapters that are coming to 140. My God, the first time I hear that figure, it's amazing. At the time, Jaime went out there, and Jaime, you get a chance to say all this. And we went to BU, and we did the same thing in BU. We were very tough. You know, we were tough. And we went to Tufts, and Tufts was a little harder, but we were there, we were tough. And we basically got them all to get recruiters and to basically get on the program. And by the end of that year, we had chapter at Harvard, at BU, and at Tufts. And that, my friends, is where the mutual support started. The chapters all supported each other, but there was not a hierarchy. It was not like one chapter leading all the other chapters. It was very much like what you have now. We had a constitution, and we were very much inspired by the whole American Revolution thing. And we had a constitution that Juan Albino, whom I'll show his picture later, who was in the second wave, was very involved. And you read it, it's like very, it's like, we're doing this. I mean, very much dedicated and very much principled, and it basically this constitution grew. There was, I think, at least maybe 3 iterations before LMSA developed its bylaws and developed its tremendous organization. We believed in research, okay? Research drives our success. Community involvement drives our survival. And we had a journal. We had a beautiful journal, and this journal was multidisciplinary. We had articles here on basically epidemiological studies on asthma in the South Bronx. We had articles on health policy, the Omnibus Bill of 1972 that was going through Congress. We had articles on Latin America, on the Latinos in Peru and Chile. I mean, it was multidisciplinary, and we basically were in Boston, where you had BU and Harvard and Tufts. So we had a lot of talent to put this together. Unfortunately, like I said before, we went overboard with the autonomy, and we didn't get serious sponsors. So we lasted two journals, and we were not able to continue this. But boy, I would love if this is something that could come back. And there we were. I wish I had a pointer, but this I think was done in 2013, and it was in Philly. I think it was in Drexel. I can't be 100% sure. It was in 2013, and this picture is like the one we're going to be taking a little later. All the way to the left is Juan Albino, who was the second wave at Harvard, and he was a Quaker. He is. I mean, I've lost touch with him, but he's a Quaker, and he, Jaime and I were revolutionaries, and so he brought balance to the organization. He lowered the volume, and he helped us. You need that. You need to have, a whole group of friends who work together, even if they don't always agree. You have Concha Mendoza next to him, who's second wave, who's basically a second wave, but was one of the founders and leaders in BU. You have George Freeman Jimenez, who was a founder of the the Albert Einstein chapter. You have Ernie Ferran, Ernesto, who's a psychiatrist, who was also one of the founders of the Einstein group. Then you have Jaime there with a big smile. He still looks the same. I don't know how he does it. And then there's me with short hair. And the rest of us, the rest are students that I don't recall. But anyway, this is us. We have the DNA. We have the spirit. You're doing it. You're going to keep doing it. What else can I say? I mean, you succeeded, and I'm so proud of you. Jaime, are you there? Is he connected?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hello.
Can you hear us?
My video is on.
Oh.
Tell him that you can hear him, because he might only.
I can hear you.
I think my video is on. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Emilio, thank you very much, and thank you all for allowing me to share in our 50th anniversary. And of course, my apologies I have a hard stop in about 5 or 10 minutes due to family obligations. Emilio, that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. You know, and to me, it's really a high honor to share in what you and your predecessors have achieved over the last half century of really remarkable progress. On a little more of a personal note, I think if medical school was a life-altering experience for me, collaborating with my colleague Emilio Carrillo and others to give birth to Boricua Health Organization was transformative and transcendent. The experience showed me how to lead from the heart, and that if by so doing, one doesn't really need a village to drive change. If you drive the right change from the heart, the village will show up. And I think over a period of time, the village indeed did show up for us. One of the first things that Emilio had me do was to address the entire first-year class from the heart, stating what we were trying to accomplish, why, and why their support was so vital. You know, they scratched their heads, they asked questions, and while they didn't jump out of their seats and take over the school, they didn't stand in our way. And some of our fellow students became really staunch supporters. And through, as Emilio said, through cajoling, protest, a brief takeover of the dean's office, outreach to the 3 medical schools, and the help of many, but not the least, Dr. Alvin Poussaint, we were able to secure a little funding, and working with all 3 medical schools, we went to work. And, you know, one of the questions we asked is, you know, why aren't more, you know, East Coast Latino students in these medical schools? And the answer was, well, you know, gee whiz, you know, they're simply not applying. And I think you remember that, Emilio. And we said, well, we'll need to fix that. It was a very grassroots effort. We wrote dozens and dozens of colleges and universities. We licked the stamps and envelopes ourselves. We created a set of criteria that Emilio talked about, and also a set of criteria for our internal use, setting forth what we thought would make for successful medical school students and great advocates in future growth.
I need help.
All right.
While we do that, let me just say what happened at the end of that first year. At the end of that first year, we connected with Helen Rodriguez-Diaz, Dr. Helen Rodriguez-Diaz, who was my mentor. She was my wife's close friend, part of the women's group. And we went to Helen. I went to Helen. We're doing this in Boston, and Helen said, hey, we got to do this in New York, got to do it in the whole country. So Helen basically, who was the mentor for all of us, she was the chairman of pediatrics at Lincoln Hospital. She just basically, she was our mother. She basically put together a conference. We had a founding conference where it wasn't just students, it was also healthcare workers and community. So it was beautiful, and we maintained that triangle for several years, where it was not just students, but it was also the residents and physicians and nurses and people who carried the trays, and we evolved. And it was Helen really who guided us, because she was the adult in the room. And you know, what can I say? You know, we miss her. Anybody knew Helen here? America, you want to say something? Yeah. Want to say something about Helen?
Well, she was the most incredible human being. Her commitment to Latino health was historical. We all knew about it. She was also, her quality as a person was out of this world. She was a leader in New York. When they appointed a director of the hospital that was sterilizing Puerto Rican women without their knowledge and of course without their consent. She was the leader of a protest that did not allow him to become the director of the hospital. So she was extremely important. We just couldn't believe when she got ill and that we were losing her, because she was one of those, you know, Martin Luther King female for the Latino.
And her pictures in the book. Anyway, do we have Jaime again?
Are we done? One more Jaime.
I think our time is up. I'm so grateful. I'm so sorry technologically we couldn't have time here to say the last words. But thank you, and keep that DNA going, and keep that community involvement going, and keep that research going.
Okay.